I bet you didn't know how the French Revolution transformed a kingdom of immense wealth and glaring inequality into a republic that would eventually lead to the rise of Napoleon. France, in the late 1700s, was a kingdom of immense wealth and glaring inequality. The opulence of the aristocracy stood in stark contrast to the dire poverty experienced by the majority of the population. The Ancien Regime, the traditional social and political system, divided society into three rigid estates. This system was deeply entrenched and resistant to change, creating a society where privilege was inherited and opportunity was scarce. The first estate, the clergy, enjoyed vast privileges and exemptions from taxation. They wielded significant influence over both the spiritual and political realms, often acting as intermediaries between the monarchy and the people. The second estate, the nobility, held immense power and land, also largely exempt from the burdens of taxation. Their wealth and status were maintained through a network of patronage and feudal obligations. The third estate, comprising everyone else, from wealthy merchants to impoverished peasants, bore the brunt of taxation and held little political power. This diverse group was united by their common grievances against the inequities of the system. This deeply unfair system, coupled with lavish spending by the monarchy, particularly under King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, brought France to the brink of financial ruin. Their extravagant lifestyle became a symbol of the disconnect between the rulers and the ruled. A series of costly wars, including support for the American Revolution, drained the treasury. These military endeavors, while politically motivated, left the country in a precarious financial state. Extravagance at the court at Versailles further fueled public resentment. The sight of the nobility indulging in luxury while the common people suffered was a stark reminder of the systemic inequality. This potent mix of social injustice, economic hardship, and royal excess set the stage for revolution. The people's frustration grew as they struggled to survive in an increasingly oppressive environment. The financial crisis reached a breaking point in the late 1780s. The government's inability to manage its finances led to widespread economic instability. Harvests failed, leading to soaring food prices and widespread famine. The agricultural crisis exacerbated the already dire economic situation, pushing the populace to the edge. The people, already burdened by heavy taxation, faced starvation, while the privileged elite seemed indifferent to their plight. This stark contrast in living conditions highlighted the urgent need for change. The writings of Enlightenment philosophers, emphasizing individual rights and popular sovereignty, circulated widely, further inflaming the desire for change. These ideas provided a philosophical foundation for the growing revolutionary sentiment. As discontent grew, Louis XVI, facing bankruptcy, was forced to act. His attempts to reform the system were too little, too late, and only served to highlight the monarchy's desperation. His advisors recommended convening the Estates General, a long-dormant assembly representing the three estates, to seek a solution to the financial crisis. This move was seen as a last-ditch effort to stave off collapse. Little did the king know that this desperate move would unleash forces beyond his control, forever altering the course of French history. The call for the Estates General ignited a revolutionary fervor that would change the nation forever. The summoning of the Estates General in 1789, for the first time since 1614, was an event charged with anticipation and trepidation. This historic assembly was convened by King Louis XVI in a desperate attempt to address the kingdom's financial crisis and the widespread discontent among the populace. Representatives from each of the three estates were elected, bringing with them a torrent of grievances and demands for reform. The first estate, comprising the clergy, and the second estate, made up of the nobility, were vastly outnumbered by the third estate, which represented the common people. The third estate, though representing the vast majority of the population, was traditionally outvoted by the combined power of the first and second estates. This imbalance of power was a source of great frustration and resentment among the commoners, who felt their voices were being systematically silenced. The third estate, emboldened by the widespread unrest and inspired by Enlightenment ideals, demanded a more just system of representation. Enlightenment thinkers like Rousseau and Voltaire had sown the seeds of liberty, equality, and fraternity, which now began to take root in the hearts and minds of the common people. They argued for voting by head, where each representative would have an equal vote rather than by estate, which effectively silenced their voice. This demand for a fairer voting system was seen as a direct threat to the entrenched privileges of the nobility and clergy. The First and Second Estates, determined to maintain their privileged position, resisted these demands. They viewed the proposed changes as an attack on their traditional rights and status, and were unwilling to cede any power to the commoners. Tensions reached a fever pitch as weeks of deadlock ensued. The inability to reach a consensus only deepened the divisions between the estates, creating an atmosphere of intense hostility and suspicion. The Third Estate, feeling increasingly marginalized and ignored, took a bold and decisive step. They began to meet separately, determined to assert their rights and push for the reforms they believed were essential for the future of France. On June 17, 1789, they declared themselves the National Assembly, the true representatives of the French people. This declaration was a revolutionary act, asserting that sovereignty resided not in the king, but in the nation itself. This audacious act, a direct challenge to the authority of the king and the established order, marked a turning point in the revolution. It was a bold assertion of the people's will against the entrenched power of the monarchy and the aristocracy. The king, initially resistant, was forced to recognize the National Assembly under pressure from the growing unrest. The mounting tension and the threat of widespread rebellion left him with little choice but to concede. The balance of power had shifted and the revolution entered a new, more radical phase. The common people, once voiceless and oppressed, now had a platform to demand sweeping changes. The ancien regime, already teetering on the brink, had been dealt a fatal blow. The old order was crumbling, and a new era of revolutionary fervor and change was dawning in France. The formation of the National Assembly ignited a wave of popular support and unrest across France, setting the stage for monumental change. The people, emboldened by the actions of their representatives, took to the streets, demanding change and an end to centuries of oppression. Fear and uncertainty gripped the aristocracy as the revolutionary fervor spread like wildfire, threatening their privileged existence. On June 20, 1789, the members of the National Assembly, finding themselves locked out of their usual meeting hall, gathered at a nearby indoor tennis court. There they swore a solemn oath, known as the Tennis Court Oath, pledging not to disband until France had a new and just constitution. This act of defiance, a powerful symbol of the revolution's unwavering resolve, further galvanized the nation and its people. Meanwhile in Paris, rumors and anxieties swirled, creating an atmosphere of tension. The king, perceived as siding with the privileged orders, had amassed troops around the city, fueling fears of a crackdown on the burgeoning revolution. On July 14, 1789, a mob of Parisians, desperate for weapons, stormed the Bastille, a formidable royal fortress and symbol of despotic power. The fall of the Bastille, a pivotal event in the French Revolution, marked the collapse of royal authority and the rise of popular power. It unleashed a wave of revolutionary violence that swept across the countryside, targeting symbols of the old regime and those perceived as enemies of the people. The revolution had entered a new, more violent and unpredictable phase, forever altering the course of history. In the aftermath of the Bastille's fall, the National Assembly worked feverishly to dismantle the structures of the ancien regime and establish a new order based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. This was a monumental task, requiring the reformation of nearly every aspect of French society and governance. On August 4, 1789, they abolished feudalism, sweeping away the centuries-old system of privileges for the nobility and clergy. This decision was not just a symbolic gesture but a practical step towards creating a society where all citizens had equal standing under the law. This radical act aimed to create a more just and equitable society, freeing the peasantry from the shackles of feudal obligations. For the first time, peasants could envision a future where their labor benefited themselves and their families, rather than the aristocracy. On August 26, 1789, the National Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a cornerstone document of the French Revolution and a powerful articulation of Enlightenment ideals. This declaration laid the groundwork for modern human rights, emphasizing the inherent dignity and equality of all individuals. The declaration proclaimed the fundamental equality of all men, affirmed natural rights to liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression, and declared that sovereignty resided in the nation, not the monarch. These principles challenged the very foundation of monarchical rule and inspired future generations to fight for their rights. France, once an absolute monarchy, became a constitutional monarchy. This transition marked a significant shift in power dynamics, as the king was now subject to the laws of the land and the will of the people. The king's power was significantly curtailed by the new constitution, which established a legislative assembly elected by a broader electorate. This assembly was tasked with representing the interests of the people and ensuring that the government remained accountable to its citizens. The revolution, however, faced significant challenges. The path to a stable and just society was fraught with obstacles, including resistance from those who benefited from the old regime. Internal divisions within the assembly, counter-revolutionary movements, and ongoing economic woes threatened to derail the fragile new order. These issues highlighted the complexities of transforming a deeply entrenched social and political system. The revolution's radical ideals and actions reverberated far beyond France's borders, inspiring movements for change across Europe and the Americas. The call for liberty, equality, and fraternity resonated with oppressed peoples everywhere. The Declaration of the Rights of Man became a touchstone for human rights declarations worldwide, leaving an indelible mark on the course of modern history. Its influence can be seen in numerous subsequent documents and movements advocating for human rights and social justice. The French Revolution fundamentally reshaped the world, laying the groundwork for modern democracies and inspiring countless movements for freedom and equality. Its legacy endures in the principles of human rights and justice that continue to guide us today. If you found this journey through history enlightening, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more educational content to you. Thank you for watching.